Okay, hello and welcome to the Black Box Podcast. Alright, tonight we're going to be talking about one of the older cases, and old by some means, new by some other means, the 2016 murder of Missy Bevers of Midlothian, Texas. This was the case of a woman who was found killed by puncture wounds to the chest, neck, and head inside a local church in the town where she lived. What makes this case a little bit different is there is a video that has gone viral on the internet of a person dressed in police getup, talking SWAT team gear, potentially riot police gear, roaming the halls of this church about 30 minutes before her death. The suspect has seen head to toe in black, except for maybe some area around the eyes, which probably gives it away as a Caucasian individual. Head to toe in black, going up and down, poking their head into doors inside this church, either waiting for Missy Bevers to arrive or perhaps doing some sort of illegal activity that is unrelated to her, and she was in the wrong place at the wrong time and stumbled upon to this horrible scene, and it ended in tragedy. Talking more to the people who are somewhat familiar with this case, and there is an enormous amount of information online for anyone who would like to see the actual video clips. And one of the most notable things about this is when you follow a lot of true crime cases, normally after maybe 1 day or 2 days, you really start to get a very strong feeling one way or another. If you evaluate a lot of this information, you really are able to formulate sort of your own hypothesis. You're able, or go along with an existing theory. You sort of think maybe this is what happened, but with the case of Missy Bevers, it's so different. This is one of the most confusing mysteries out there, because you have a video of someone walking around in either SWAT team gear or riot police gear, walking around the site of the murder 30 minutes before, which is completely out of place. The person is walking in an abnormal manner with their toes pointed outward, almost like they're either wearing shoes that are too big for them or they have some sort of prosthetic limb, and it's very difficult to identify. The person isn't stealing anything. It looks like in one hand the perpetrator has a hammer, in the other hand, at first, maybe sort of a crowbar, and that later changes to a white box. And what is most difficult to say about this is, who was this person? Let alone did this person commit a murder, but who was this person? And that's exactly what we're going to examine today. After sort of putting some thought into the case, how do you respond to the possibility that Missy Bevers was murdered not by someone that she knew, not by someone that was connected to her work as a personal trainer, as a fitness instructor, but by a professional hitman or hitwoman, a professional assassin? And yes, that's right. One thing that never fits with me when I start evaluating this is the amount of precision that occurred, and someone was not caught. One of the important things to remember is Missy was killed in a church where she planned to have a fitness class at 5 o'clock in the morning. That is when her students if you will, participants in the class were expected to arrive. Missy was supposed to arrive at 4 a.m. to set up and prepare. But the reason this was held in a church was normally the class was held outside. However, stormy weather, rain, forced her to move it inside, and she posted a Facebook message, a sort of bulletin, saying that due to stormy weather, this class is going to be held inside. No matter who this was, that is an extremely small amount of planning time. Whether they knew Missy was going to be in the church at all, that is just such a small amount of time to orchestrate such a almost flawless murder. And it's very difficult to get a direct answer. One of the theories is that maybe some information that has not been made to the public was Missy kept her equipment in the church and she went there frequently. She was always there at 4 a.m. Everybody knew this, so that's where she would be found. But that still does not explain how, in a small town of around 20,000 people, Midlothian, Texas, no one would either recognize some parts of that costume, or more importantly, no one would recognize certain details about purchasing the costume. The police would not be able to track any sort of receipts or purchase history or the histories of Amazon.com or anything. Even if somebody bought some of this material on eBay. One of the biggest things to remember is not any part of that suit was ever recovered or identified. Now, getting back to the assassin theory, that this was a hitman or maybe even hitwoman, very difficult to tell. It is almost too precise. The fact that someone is just in the church wearing police gear that is just completely out of place, that they're just poking their head into doors for no particular reason and making a lot of abnormal movements. There's the famous door that is like I guess the split door where the top half and the bottom half open at different points, and I really noticed just lots of very abnormal and unnatural movements around that. Most of the time when the perpetrator is moving around, all of the movements are very abnormal, whether it's the walking style or just not looking for any place in particular, just roaming the halls of a church at roughly 3:30 in the morning. They aren't stealing anything that we can see. They don't seem to have any plan to steal anything, because who is going to orchestrate a crime that takes 30 minutes at 3:30 in the morning inside a church? For example, even if the person is an actual burglar, wouldn't they want to be in and out as fast as they possibly can in case someone would show up? Or maybe they're just so confident with their burglar abilities that they would just kill them anyway, knock them on the head with a hammer, and then run away. Maybe, but that's not possible. Sorry, not possible. That's implausible. Most likely not what happened. Not one piece of that crime suit, that police suit, has ever been recovered. It almost looks like it's an intentional distraction just to make people guessing. It is very precise, and the fact that someone was able to execute such a flawless crime with very little time to plan, it's almost like someone was familiar with Missy Bevers, someone was very familiar with her routines, but it really does not just sort of... The fact that her class was moved from the outside into the inside, and we don't really know if she went to the church every day at 4 a.m., but the fact that her class was moved from outside to inside, and someone devised such a flawless plan who is never identified in any way, who knew how to avoid the security cameras in this very bizarre, distracting fashion. It's a lot of thought that would not go down normally. The average person would probably not want to plan like this. Furthermore, in support of the assassin theory, it almost seems like someone had a little too much experience with this. For across the street from the church, there is a sporting goods store which is diagonal from the church about, forget if it was 300 or 500 meters away, less than 500 meters away, which is in plain view, and a car, a silver Nissan Altima, went into the parking lot, drove around in a circle with the lights cut off. As soon as the car entered the parking lot, they cut the lights off, and they drive around in a circle, then they go in reverse, and then they drive away. I guess I can agree with the theory that the person who was driving that silver Nissan Altima most likely went to the church, smashed a window, drove to the parking lot of the sporting goods store to see if the police would show up. to see if a silent alarm had been triggered, to see if any form of alarm had been triggered. And this also gives me the impression that this has something to do with multiple assailants. Perhaps one person is driving the car and another person is doing the actual murder, sad to say. Can't think of a better word, the actual murder. And what is most kind of terrifying about that is it just feels like a very, very carefully orchestrated plan for just such a short amount of time. This does not feel like the work of an amateur. This does not feel like the work of someone planning quickly and doing this for the first time. If this had been somebody who had been doing this for the first time, don't you think there would have been more evidence turning up, or more evidence that had not been destroyed? Wouldn't there have been a larger trail, whether it's somebody has a receipt for some type of police costume on some credit card or on some account that somehow the police got hold of, or somebody even just came forward and say, yeah, I think, that looks like something that I saw at a costume party, or that looks like actually something that somebody had in their house, and someone would come forward with some sort of information recognizing the police suit. I find it very difficult to believe that no one has any further details on anything related to the police suit. No one has any further details on the Nissan Altima. Even that, like when you're dealing with a very small town of 20,000 people, even just identifying like the driver of a Nissan Altima with the amount of news coverage that this had, wouldn't somebody just be like, oh yeah, so-and-so drives a silver Nissan Altima, and at least tell the police? I mean, that's highly possible, and it's not even beyond belief. Or at least the police would be able to just go through the records and find out who was driving a car of that description. They have solved many cases that way. However, none of that happened. The police can't even find out anything related to the car. They can't find anything related to the suit, which sort of gives me the impression that this is someone who had a little familiarity with the area, and a little familiarity with the church, and a little familiarity with Missy Bevers by studying the scene for a little while prior to the murder. That gives me the impression that this was a professional assassin. Missy Bevers had sort of a history of exchanging very raunchy, very adult-themed text messages with a variety of men. She was married, but she did have this history of sharing a bunch of text messages with other men who possibly were in other relationships, and one of them was definitely married to someone else. So she would have had people that would have been interested in causing trouble for her, or even interested in taking her out. There is a wide range of motives that could have been coming from a wide range of people. However, this does not feel like the work of an amateur. If this person had been, an amateur, I just get the feeling that there would be some larger form of evidence left behind. There would be some sort of clue, whether it was even just, materials left at the crime scene, that they would be able to trace back to a local person. Nothing. There has not been anything like that. And that almost looks like something that is done too well. There's something that has been done almost to a professional standard. So I find it very difficult to believe that the person in that video, the person wearing the police and riot gear and SWAT team uniform, is just an angry individual looking for revenge. It really feels like it is a professional assailant.